Well, good morning, Max Living family. It's great to be here this morning. Dr. Colin with you this morning, and it's always a privilege and an honor to be on the Facebook feed here and do these live calls. This is so much fun for me. So it's great to see you this morning. I have some really awesome stuff for everyone today. And so, what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about, obviously, I love BJ Palmer and I like to study BJ Palmer and his writings. But BJ was a very avid philosopher and a very well read person and used to read the Bible a lot. And you can see in his writings how his writings parallel things that happen in the Bible. And I just want to start this morning by sharing with you this book. So this is one of the green books that I have here, the live copy, Upside Down and Right Side Up with BJ, including the greatest mystery of history. And this is really cool because this was given to me by a friend of mine. It was actually given to my son by a friend of mine who I was, he was a mentor for me, Dr. Jay Hill, who actually went to Palmer College when BJ was alive and played keyboards, played piano in BJ's mansion for his Christmas party, which was absolutely astounding, and love hearing those stories. But he got this book, and it was signed to Dr. J by David Palmer, who was the son of BJ in 1964. So I cherish this copy. I love it, and it sits on my shelf right in front of my desk here. So awesome thing to be able to share. So this morning we're going to talk about biblical principles, how they compare to chiropractic principles, and how you can relate that to your business, how you can build a practice based on these principles. And I think this is going to blow you away this morning. So we go right back to the very first book in the Bible, Genesis, and this is where it all starts. So if you look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and the Spirit of God hovered over the waters. So right there, the first principle of the 33 principles, which is the major premise, is that there is a universal intelligence that exists in all matter, continually giving to it its properties and actions, thus maintaining it in existence. BJ and Dee, when chiropractic was formed, when the profession of chiropractic was formed, and they were developing the vision for chiropractic and the principles that chiropractic was formed upon, they looked at it as God's way of healing. And they knew that it would be totally shunned if they took it from a quote unquote religious standpoint, if they used religious terms to try to describe this beautiful thing that they had. So that's why they tried to make it as generic as possible using universal intelligence. But we all know that the universe is not intelligent. There is a power in the universe that exists everywhere, and that only comes from God. And it echoes right here in the very first book of Genesis that God created the heavens and the earth. And then God said, let there be light. Let there be light. And this is the basis of all function and all healing right here in the very first chapter in Genesis. Let there be light. Because obviously you look at the term lux, lux meaning light. We are masters of correcting subluxation. We restore light to the darkness. And what is darkness? Darkness is only the absence of light. What is disease, bad health, disease, sickness, and death? It comes from the absence of light, subluxation. It's the number one leading cause of death in our world. So darkness is the absence of light. So this is beautiful, beautiful stuff when you really start to get it. So then it goes down to say that God produced the land and the vegetation. But what he did is that this is really cool. When you really dissect the words in the Bible, he actually let the land produce the vegetation. He delegated his power to the land to produce the vegetation. And he created plants that had rearing seeds in them. So the sustenance of life was therefore created in the world that it would sustain itself. Life always finds a way because that's the way God created it. So God delegated the creation of the animals. He said, let the land bring forth land animals and let the sea bring forth sea animals. And thus it did. So he delegated the creation of animals to the earth and the sea. And this is really important when you talk about chiropractic philosophy, because the innate intelligence that exists in a land mammal or a land animal versus the innate intelligence that exists in a human is very different. There's still an intelligence there, but it's very different. And I'll share with you how that works in just a few minutes here. So he started to define days. And in the first 6 days, when God created the world, it's really cool because every step he sat back and he said, he created the earth, the heavens and the earth, and he sat back and he said, this is good. So there was complete intention in everything that God did. Complete intention. And it's that intention that we can take into our practice to help us to really start to spread the word of chiropractic and the word of the principle to our patients. And watch how this all comes together. This is absolutely brilliant. So he sat back and he said, this is good. The water brings forth the land or the water animals. The land brings forth the land animals. So he delegates and life finds a way. So again, this compares to chiropractic principles, the triune, when you talk about the triune of intelligence, force, and matter. God had intelligence, but he delegated that force, he delegated that life to the land and to the water so that land and water could sustain itself by creating plants, creating the animals, creating the birds. But here's where it gets different. It goes on to say that God decided to form man, and he wanted to create man in his own image. So man, humans, are the dominant species on the planet of the earth. Now, this is where it gets really cool because he takes dust, he takes matter. So we talk about intelligence, force, and matter. He takes matter, he breathes life through his nostrils into that matter. So the force of the breath into the matter and the intelligence of God creates human beings in his own image. He actually said he called them Adam. So Adam and Eve, he called Adam. It was later that Adam called Eve, Eve. So man and woman, God created in his image. And this gets so cool. So we're created from the dust of the earth. So we're created from matter. And here's the first thing that God said to man. And this is where it gets absolutely brilliant. Be fruitful. Be fruitful. Well, what does that mean? What is fruitful? Well, what's a fruit? A fruit is an organism whose seed is in itself. A fruit is an organism whose seed is in itself. So God planted the seed of his own creativity in each one of us. He didn't give all of his creativity to any of us. He planted the seed of a small amount of his creativity in every single one of us. And thus, every single person on the face of the earth is different, but has an element of that seed of God's creativity inside of them. Thus, the innate intelligence. And innate intelligence is a subsection of universal intelligence, which is God, in each one of us. So he said, be fruitful. And then he said, do multiply. These are the first words that God said to man. Do multiply. So be fruitful, do multiply. So what does that mean? Well, that means obviously replenish your species, have children, see human beings grow on the face of earth. But he said also, nourish the seed that I put in you so that you can become fruitful in what you do, and you can become an expression and glorify me through the creativity that I put inside you, and you can express to the world. It is absolutely astounding when you think about it that way. So now, from chiropractic principles, whenever we make an adjustment on somebody, we're actually removing the interference from that seed of God's creativity that is inside every single person. You make an adjustment and you remove the weeds. You are weeding the garden of the creativity of mankind. It is such an astounding thought when you think about it that way, that every time you adjust somebody, you're nourishing the seed of creativity that God put inside you, that God put inside that person on the table. It is such a huge responsibility. So don't ever think that there was any type of mischance that you are a chiropractor. There is complete intention of you being a chiropractor. You are a chiropractor because God has ordained it right from the time that you were created, and there is no mischance, there is no misdirection, there was no misconceived notion that you shouldn't have been a chiropractor. You're a chiropractor, And these are the principles that it's all based on. So he said, be fruitful, do multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. So, in other words, replenish the earth, fill the earth, have abundance, think with an abundant mindset. There are people that need your help. There are people that there are sick, suffering, and dying people in this world. God wants you to be in an abundant mindset all the time. And then the last thing he said was have dominion. Have dominion. What is dominion? Well, dominion is dominance over your kingdom. You look at the word kingdom, it is the dominion of the king. It is the acquisition of wealth. It is the acquisition of abundance, abundance of life, abundance of relationships, abundance of joy. It's just an absolute abundance in every single perspective of your life. And when you're making an adjustment with this mindset that you're removing weeds from the seed of creativity that's in every single person, you're allowing the light that God put in there to shine brighter by removing that interference. And you're thinking with this abundant mindset. And he said, fill the earth and subdue it. So protect it, protect the principle, and have dominion. And you can have everything that your heart desires when you think in this principle mindset. So be, do, have. Be fruitful, do multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion. Be, do, have. And here's the thing. God put this desire in every single person to have more love, to have more relationships, to have more abundance, to have more experiences, to have more joy. If you can think with that abundant mindset, you need to do more. So to have more, we need to do more, but to do more without being more, thus we end up spinning our wheels. We end up making mistakes. We end up going backwards. So the first thing is becoming more. Be, do, have, becoming more. And it only works in that direction. You can take a chiropractor with a practice of 80 visits a week and put them in a practice of 1,200 visits a week, and immediately that 1,200 visit a week practice would go down to 80 visits a week in no time, because there's no way that that person can sustain it, because they haven't become the person, they haven't become the chiropractor to sustain that type of practice. Consumption allows for production. Consumption allows for production. When we think in this world of lack, and I've often heard this over the years, is that there's too many chiropractors. We need to limit the number of chiropractors. And there's still a lot of schools that think this way. We think in this lack mindset. But when we think in an abundance mindset, we allow for the idea that consumption allows for production. When you think about an apple is a fruit. God said, be fruitful. The seeds are inside the apple. Well, there's a quote that says, any person can count the number of seeds in an apple, but only God knows how many apples are in a seed. So when we expose the seeds, it becomes an abundant mindset. So that's really the whole principle where we have to kind of focus our attention on. So remember, the nervous system in the body, chiropractic principles, is the medium between the seed of creativity and the physical matter. The nervous system is the medium between the seed of creativity, the innate intelligence, that beautiful innate intelligence that God breathed life into you at the time that you were conceived, and your physical body, your physical matter. And if we can release that seed, if we can nurture that seed through good nutrition, if we can nurture that seed through proper exercise and oxygen, if we can detox the body from all kinds of chemicals that restrain us, if we can put positive intentions into our mind and put positive energy into our mind through prayer and meditation and learning and growth, and then we can remove the weeds from the garden of creativity that is the seed inside of us, amazing things happen. That's where we get to really experiencing the true human potential that we have. So when we can take these principles and turn them into business principles, how do we turn this into business principles? Well, first of all, let's start analyzing what we do on a day-to-day basis to share the principle with every single person. And this is so huge. And it wasn't, I'd been in practice many years before I finally figured this out. When I finally became unfiltered, the way I spoke with patients and told them about the principle of chiropractic, that there was this incredible intelligence inside them, that they don't need any help, they just need no interference. And when we remove the interference and nurture the body with good nutrition and good exercise and put proper things in their mind and positive energy in their mind, that the 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 limits were unmatched. There was nothing that could. There was no disease on the face of the earth that couldn't be contained by the intelligence that's within the body, as long as we removed all the interference. And that gave people hope. That gave people incredible intention to come into the office and stay for their lifetime. And it was only until I decided that I did not care about what people thought of me, I didn't care about what people expected. I only talked with intention, with principle, and explained to people this is exactly what we do here, without any attachment to the result. I didn't care if people signed on. I didn't care if people brought their family. I just told them the principle. And I said, this is what we do. This is what our team does. This is what our staff, this is what our multitude, hundreds and thousands of patients over the years in practice do to get great results. And that's all it was. It was just sharing that principle with them. And when you put the systems in place to follow that, all of a sudden, practice just starts to explode. And it doesn't explode incrementally. When you start to make the change, when you go back to the be and become somebody different, the do and the have fall into place. And things don't grow slowly. They grow like a mushroom cloud. They grow incredibly fast. So think about this. Here's a few things. Like when you look at the history of the world, what if Hitler, what if Mussolini, what if Osama bin Laden got adjusted the day that they were born? What would happen to the history of the world? Would the Holocaust have ever happened? Would World War II ever have happened? Would 9/11 ever have happened if those people were adjusted the day that they were born and through their lifetime? If they understood the principle of chiropractic, if they understood it like we understand it, what would have happened? Don't ever think that you can't change the direction of your community, the direction of lives of people in your office, or the direction of the world with chiropractic principles. Don't ever think that you can't change that. You can make such a difference by explaining the principle. BJ said that, one small thing that you say to someone today can turn into something incredibly great tomorrow. And I'm paraphrasing it, but you understand what I'm saying is that don't ever filter the principle. The principle it should be told unfiltered. So how do we need to start inspiring our team. So if our team does not understand the principle of chiropractic, that's where you need to start. Your team is your greatest steward of the principle of chiropractic. They're going to spend more time with patients in your office than you will. So your team should be very eloquent and articulate when it comes to explaining the principle to people in your office. So make sure that that's trained on, make sure it's rehearsed, it's role played on a regular basis. What is the principle of chiropractic? And what makes your office different than the guy down the street who does laser and all kinds of therapies and pain relief care versus an office like we have that shares the principle with people and removes the interference, removes the subluxation, and allows that innate intelligence that God breathed into that body to flourish on its highest level. Inspire your team. Align your systems. Are your systems aligned with congruency? God had intention when he created the world. God had intention when he created humans. God had intention when he delegated the creation of animals, birds, and fish. Everything was done with intention. So everything you do in your office, have intention. Have a goal set up. Have a plan for where this is going. Make sure your team knows the plan. So align your systems. Let's go back to the be. The be fruitful. Study techniques. Become a master at your techniques. I just said to our Canadian coaching clients the other day is that mastery happens when you can perform a skill requiring task without conscious thought. That's when you become a master at something. You want to play an instrument? You've seen masters of an instrument be able to pick it up and play beautifully without even thinking about what they're playing. Become a master at your technique. Become a master at the delivery of your systems. Become a master at your communication. So that might mean you taking a course. It might mean you hiring a coach. It might mean you studying at a higher level. Dive deep into these green books. I mean, reading these things will give you all the tools that you need to know to start talking about philosophy. When you put it into your mind, it starts to come out through your mouth. And when it comes out through your mouth, that's when the world around you starts to change. Do multiply. Well, get people in. Focus on your marketing. Focus on the in-person marketing you're doing, whether it's lunch and learns or dinners or going out and doing talks or going into churches or doing makeovers, whatever it is you're doing, get out there and get the principle into people's minds. Chiropractic principles need to be everywhere. Be, do, have. So practice with intention. I want to share with you this one last thought, and it was, in preparing for this talk, I was going through all kinds of things in the past and things that I thought of. I remember the worst and the best adjustment I had was one single adjustment by one individual named Jim Sigafus. And many of you will recognize that name. Jim was a very, very articulate orator. He was a great speaker. He was an incredible philosopher. Huge chiropractor in the profession as far as sharing the principle of chiropractic with people. And he used to speak around the country at different seminars. And I remember meeting him, and I absolutely fell in love with his message. And I would follow him everywhere in my early years of practice. And he really did mentor me into the person and the chiropractor that I became. And I give him the majority, if not all, the credit for that. And I remember at a small seminar that he was hosting here in Canada, I remember going up to him and asking him, Dr. Jim, can you go ahead, and everybody called him Sig, Dr. Sig, can you go ahead and give me an adjustment? And he said, sure. And he got a chair. And he said, kneel down on the floor and put your head on the chair. And he just looked at me and he said, I want you to turn to the right. And he gave me a toggle adjustment. Now, in my educated mind, having gone through the schooling that I was going through and early in practice, on a physical level, that adjustment was the worst adjustment I've ever felt. It was mushy, it was slow, it was just, it was on a chair, it was on a cushioned chair. I was kneeling on the floor with my head turned to the side, and he did a quick little toggle, and it was a mushy adjustment. But on the other hand, it was his presence and his certainty and his love that I immediately felt through that adjustment. And I'm getting shivers down my spine just thinking about it. It was the best adjustment from a spiritual level that I've ever felt in my life. And he put his hand on my head after that one adjustment, one toggle, put his hand on my head, and he said, you're healed. Just with that certainty. And he said, I want you to go lie down and let that set. And I just went and laid down on the floor. And I must have been on the floor for 15 minutes. But the things that were going through my mind after that adjustment and his certainty and his touch was absolutely incredible. So don't ever think that you don't have such a huge effect on people around you and patients in your office. You have such a huge effect. Become the person that God wants you to be. Become the healer that God wants you to be. Open up your heart, open up yourself, be completely present with every single person, because they deserve the right to be completely clear. They deserve the right to have the weeds ripped out of their garden so that the seed of creativity that God put there can flourish on the highest level. Guys, I love you. Have an awesome day today.